Hello, everyone. I'm Marcello La Rosa, a professor of information systems and leader of the information systems group here at the University of Melbourne. On behalf of my research group and the entire university, it is my greatest pleasure to welcome you all to the 33rd edition of the International Conference on Advanced Information Systems Engineering, or CAiSE, as we all know it. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which the University of Melbourne is situated, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I'd also like to acknowledge any First Nation peoples who participate in the conference. And I'd like to pay my respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and the waters of Australia. What a roller coaster the last couple of years. So we started planning CAiSE back in June 2017. I was at CAiSE in Essen, and back then I approached Barbara Pernici, the then steering committee chair, and I asked her, Barbara, you know, I'm moving to Melbourne Uni. I'd like to see whether it is possible to host CAiSE outside of Europe. We all know how well ingrained this conference is in European culture, and it has historically been held in Europe, aside for a couple of exceptions. So I discussed with Barbara the opportunity of hosting CAiSE in Australia at Melbourne Uni, but no one could have possibly told me that this would not happen because of a global pandemic. And here we are in June 2021, hosting this conference online with its pros and its cons. So this is what we had organized, and we were hoping to share with you. We had organized, or we were planning to organize a conference in our main campus, the Parkville campus. This is a historical campus of the university, where you can find Victorian age buildings next to modern facilities. We were planning, in fact, to host the conference at the Arts West building, which is a living museum. Have yesterday's night dinner at the Ormond College, which is one of the best representations of Gothic revival in Australia. Some people call it Oxford because of the beauty of its Gothic revival hall. Tonight's dinner was supposed to be at the Woodward Centre with a beautiful skyline of Melbourne, and then tomorrow's dinner, the award or gala dinner, was supposed to be underwater in the Sea Life Aquarium of Melbourne. And this week was full of events here in Melbourne. We were supposed to have the International Jazz Festival, postponed to November, the International Theatre Spectaculars, cancelled, but we still have the night markets and the French Impressionists. I know it's not the Italian Renaissance, for that you have to go to Paris, but we have 79 paintings of French Impressionists for the first time here in the country, and a dedicated room to Monet, an entire circular room dedicated to the beauty of Monet's paintings. So plenty of events happening in Melbourne, but unfortunately nothing of this we can share with you. So we thought, how can we make this up? How can we make up for what we can't do face-to-face? And unfortunately, we are all tired of Zoom. So we decided, no, let's stick to what this conference is most known for. Let's focus on the quality. So we decided to strip off the conference to its essence. There is only one social event, so to say, a virtual beer tonight or later today for Europeans. And let's focus on the quality of the conference. So we have packaged 46 sessions, very rich of content and papers. 7 keynote speakers, considering the workshops, the collocated events, and the main conference. 1 main research track presenting 33 papers, covering a diversity of topics in information systems engineering, in 11 sessions, 2 co-located events, VPMDS and MSAD, and 5 workshops featuring 40 papers in 21 sessions, the CAiSE forum with 14 posters and 4 tool demos in 2 sessions with parallel rooms, and a doctoral consortium with 11 presentations in 3 sessions, and concluding with 2 tutorials. All in all, we received over 300 papers and accepted about 30% of it, so 90 papers. And as you can see from the numbers in the different tracks, despite the conference being held online, we had very healthy numbers of submissions and a healthy acceptance rate. And all in all, as of today, we have 931 registrations, and we are still counting because we decided to keep the registration system open. No one could have possibly told us that CAiSE would have reached these high numbers. So this is in itself a very good achievement of this conference series. So we've organized this in 5 days. The first 2 days are now gone. We had a number of sessions, around 5 workshops and the 2 co-located events, and the actual main conference track starts today and go on until Friday. So today we have 4 conference sessions and the 2 tutorial sessions. Tomorrow we have 4 more conference sessions, the 2 forum sessions and the first doctoral consortium session. And finally on Friday, we have the last 3 conference sessions and the last 2 doctoral consortium sessions. We try to minimize the number of sessions in parallel to allow each of you to get as much as possible from this rich program, though we understand that we are all tired after over 1 year of Zoom meetings about online conferences. So we understand if all of a sudden you disappear and prefer a coffee or a beer to the conference. That is part of it. I'd just like to highlight the 3 most important sessions: the virtual beer or virtual wine or soft drink tonight here in Australia, 3 p.m. Central European Time. Tomorrow, same time, the awards session, and finally the closing on Friday and the presentation of CAiSE 2022. There are a number of awards, and this year we have 3 new entries. So we have the Best Paper Award, coming with a prize of €1,000 sponsored by Springer, and the Distinguished Paper Award related to the main conference. This year we have a new entry, the Best Reviewer Award, and those of you who have attended this conference enough times, they know that this award has been on and off, but this year we have put a recommendation to the steering committee to make this become a standard award in this conference series. We also have the Best Demo Paper Award and the new Best Poster Award, then the Best PhD Thesis Award, coming with a prize of €500 in book vouchers sponsored by Springer, and the new Best Doctoral Consortium Presentation Award. So we couldn't have live sessions face-to-face, so we tried to make it up with the awards. So a big thank you goes to the sponsors, the University of Melbourne, the City of Melbourne and the Melbourne Convention Bureau and Springer. There's a funny story around the Melbourne Convention Bureau. They were supposed to sponsor one international keynote speaker, including travel, accommodation. Of course, nothing of that could happen. I would also like to thank the 23 program board members, 60 program committee members, all authors and reviewers, and of course, the organizers, an army of people that helped me put up this conference. So first of all, I would like to thank Laura Jouliffe as the organization chair. This conference would have never, ever possibly happened without Laura. She has been behind everything. So she has been fantastic. Of course, Shazia Sadiq and Ernest Teniente as the program chairs put up, as I said, a very high quality program for the main track. And likewise, Artem Poliviani and Stephanie Rinderlema as workshop chairs. We also got Axel Korthaus and Selmi Norkan as forum chairs, Pierluigi Plebani and Arthur Teroftere as tutorial chairs, Chuno Yang, John Crosby, and Yolita Ralite as doctoral consortium chairs, and Eric Dubois as the traditional PhD award chair. We also had 5 publicity committee members chaired by Abel Armas Cervantes. And of course, a deep thank you to Johan Eder as the chair of the CAiSE series steering committee. Johan, I would like to hand it over to you to talk a bit about the conference series. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marcello. Welcome, everybody. As I read in the chat already, good morning, good midday, good evening, good night around the globe. It is really a pleasure to open CAiSE 21. It's the 33rd conference in the CAiSE series, and so we already have built up some tradition. When some years ago, and Marcello said, there was the idea of organizing CAiSE in Australia, in particular in Melbourne. In the steering committee, there was on one hand, there was some enthusiasm because it's a new area, and we know about the thriving information systems community in Australia, who are also frequently contributing to CAiSE. On the other hand, there were 2 concerns, and mentioning these concerns means you should be careful what to fear for. One concern was the long airline travels. Well, I think we all would like to be able to have long flights. And the second is, isn't it a bit cold at that time? So Marcello certified us that it is cool, but quite acceptable. And nowadays, I would say, could I have some of your cool air into my hot office? That would make it more bearable. Coming this year to Australia is also fine, because this year CAiSE was up for re-evaluation by the CORE consortium. You know that the CORE ranking is a very important ranking in computer science, and I'm very, very happy to be able to tell you that we retained the A ranking in the CORE conference ranking. Now, this is quite a success and quite an achievement, and such an achievement is a community effort. So it takes a lot of people to organize, maintain the quality of the conference. Here also the second law of thermodynamics applies. It means you need external energy in order to maintain a certain order and structure. And over the years, many people contributed to build up CAiSE, to maintain the quality of CAiSE, to increase the outreach of CAiSE. And every year, a set of people stands out and takes an additional burden, devotes their time, energy, expertise in order to organize the yearly instance of CAiSE. And Marcello just showed you all those who worked in the, let's say, in the officers range and organized everything. And behind that are also all the authors, all the reviewers. And over the years, this is quite a community. And I'm really like this idea of having something which is not top down, which is not triggered by financial interests or whatever, but it is a common sense about the value of science, about the value of communicating about science and building up this structure. And it is really a pleasure to see this conference series thriving and with this enormous outreach we have this year. I think I see CAiSE on a very, very good way. Well, with that, I hand over to Ernesto tell us about all the work of the program committee and about the program. Ernesto, you are muted.
Hello, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good night, good whatever. Welcome to this virtual Australia, where we are handing over right now. And first of all, I would like to thank, on behalf of Shasi and myself, to Marcello, to the CAiSE steering committee and the community, for giving us the opportunity to chair this program this year. It has been a great and amazing experience, and we are happy with the work we have done. It has been hard, but we have succeeded to put, as far as we think at least, an excellent program. We were lucky, we had a huge number of full paper submissions. You can see 172 paper submission. From those, 19 were directly accepted and 14 were conditionally accepted. So that makes an overall total of 33 papers accepted at the conference. It is worth mentioning that the conditional accepted papers, the authors of those papers did a great job on improving the paper, and so all of them got accepted. And that makes at the end an acceptance rate of 19%, which is in the line of what has been happening for CAiSE during the last few years. Next. As far as the number of reviews per submission, you can see that we have more or less half of the papers with 2 reviews and half of the papers with 3 reviews. This is easy to understand because it means that in the first round of reviewing, only the PC members take a look at the papers, and from those reviews of the PC members, then we could discard more or less the half of them because they didn't get the enough mark, and for the rest they went to the one. As far as the number of authors per submission, you can see that more or less about the 75 of the papers have from 2 to 4 authors. That make us feel safe and quiet in the sense that this is quite reasonable, and only 8 papers had more than 6 authors. So that makes things quite reasonable as well. Next. Number of submissions per author. You can see that we have at least about 650 people submitting papers. So that makes also a huge impact on the community. There's a lot of people submitting papers to CAiSE. Most of the people, around 80%, just submitted 1 paper, and we have up to 2 people that submitted 6 papers. So it's also quite reasonable understanding of what's happening here. Marcelo? Submissions by country. This is also interesting statistics. We have like 46 countries submitting to CAiSE this year. This is people writing part of a paper. This is because of the decimal. So 20.6 means that there are 2 authors of a paper with 3 authors that were Germans. And in the top 4, we have 4 countries with clearly more submissions than the rest, which are Germany, Australia, China, and France. So those were the ones that provided more submissions to CAiSE this year. And we are lucky to have authors from let's say, non-common countries, emerging countries which are growing and which are coming here every day, like Saudi Arabia, Serbia, Paraguay, Malaysia, South Korea, etc., etc., etc. So it's a nice distribution also, where we see that those most developed, most traditional countries in the CAiSE community submitting further, but also growing the tail, let's say, of these graphics with new countries emerging and coming to CAiSE. And as Johan said, we think that this is a good proof of the health of the conference at this moment. Next. As far as the number of accepted papers by country, here we have a clear winner, which is Germany. Germany has about almost 10 papers. So, and then we have 3 countries after Germany, which are Spain, the Netherlands, and France. And we get until at the end like 15 countries having accepted papers. So one thing to improve in the future is to have people from those most emerging countries being able to put more papers in the main conference. This is understandable. Of course, there are countries with more tradition, but it would be nice also to see a broader spectrum of countries, people from different places contributing to, in practice, to the main CAiSE conference. As far as topics, this is also a nice statistics and a nice thing to see. So the most important, or the topic that got most submissions was process modeling, analysis, and mining. So that makes a good insight on the strength that this community is having into CAiSE in the last year. So this was not the same 5 years ago. The second topic is a classical traditional CAiSE topic, which is conceptual modeling, languages, and design. And then we see that the third and the fourth topics are very, very novel topics. These were one of the topics that Chaz and myself tried to foster this year, which are AI and machine learning and ways to improve this. And if we go to the fifth topics, we see that process automation, mining, and monitoring is also growing increase. And that makes the importance of processes and AI into this information system engineering community be growing, and that I think that this should be taken into account for next CAiSE editions. Next, Marcelo. And last. And then if we go and see the percentage of acceptance, the acceptance rate by topic, we see that the two ones that got more papers submitted got 0.3 of acceptance rate, 30% more or less. And the things that we like to outline here, to strengthen here, is that there is almost no paper on AI and machine learning except at the main conference. So this is the result. They were the third and the fourth, I don't know, and together were probably the ones that submitted most. But then when we realized of those that were accepted, that makes that almost no. Maybe there's there's a tail here that I didn't show because of illustration purposes, but I think this is something that has to be taken also into account, because maybe it's that because this area is new to information system engineering and still have to learn how to explain their ideas into these settings. But it may also be the case that we have to be more aware of this new impact of this new area, and think how we can incorporate naturally this growing interest of these two new areas. Just a few thoughts on how has happened and how this has been. And then I pass the word to Shasia, who will present the invited speaker. Next. Yeah.
Thank you, Ernest, and greetings to all from down under. So I am a bit north of Melbourne, where Marcello is at the University of Queensland here in Brisbane. Unfortunately, currently Brisbane is in lockdown, so myself and our keynote speaker, Michael, which is quite unusual for Brisbane. And it's also raining, which is also quite unusual for Brisbane. I do recall talking to colleagues after the program board meeting in Paris last year, and we made many plans for visits to UQ when everybody comes for CAiSE in Melbourne. Just stating that offer is still valid. By the way, as soon as travel restrictions are lifted, everybody is very welcome to visit, Melbourne and UQ, and we look forward to that in the future. For now, I would like to extend my thanks to my colleague and partner in crime, Ernest, for his support and effort throughout this period. Marcello and Laura, you've been absolutely amazing. All the organizers, program committee, board members, all reviewers, authors, thank you for your continued support of the CAiSE conference and for your contributions to the field of information systems engineering. This year, we had a theme of intelligent information systems, acknowledging the uncertainty that organizations, and indeed all of us as individuals, are dealing with. The need for intelligent information systems that provide, trusted, adaptive, agile, autonomous solutions, as we positioned it in the call for papers, we know that that's ever increasing. And the expectation from the research and innovation community to deliver on those promises is also increasing. And that's how, you could have observed all the recent interest in topics like AI, machine learning, IoT, and data analytics is spanning across not just the traditional venues, but into our area of information systems engineering as well. So our first keynote hits the mark perfectly for the conference theme. It is my great pleasure to introduce our first keynote, Professor Michael Roseman. Michael will discuss the role of affordances and trust in designing intelligent systems. Now, Michael is no stranger to the CAiSE community. His interests have spanned across technical and organizational aspects of information systems, and many of us, of course, know him very well for the significant contributions he's made to the area of business process management. Michael is the author, editor of 8 books, more than 350 refereed papers published in top journals like MISQ, EGIS, and so on. He's editorial board member of 10 international journals and co-inventor of several US patents. As the former head of QUT's Information Systems School, Michael established the Woolworth Chair in Retail Innovation, the Brisbane Airport Chair in Innovation, and PwC Chair in Digital Economy. Michael's projects have received funding from industry partners such as Accenture, Cisco, Infosys, PwC, Rio Tinto, and SAP. So before we start, just a quick reminder for everyone that questions, as soon as Michael starts, you are welcome to start posting your questions. We would prefer that you use the Q&A function of Zoom to post your questions so that we can look at them in one place. Of course, the chat function is enabled, as well as the hand raise function is also enabled. And at the end of the presentation, we will try to get through as many questions as possible. Now, with that, colleagues, please join me in welcoming Professor Michael Roseman for the first CAiSE 21 keynote. Michael, welcome.
Thank you so much, Shazia. I very much appreciate these kind words. And also from my side, very warm welcome from Brisbane, wherever you are. Let me start also, Shazia, on gets the same effort, but carries a very different reward. No doubt, you will leave a long-lasting legacy, and I very much, on behalf of the entire community, like to thank you, Marcello, Ernest, and also Laura for what you've done here. We are very, very grateful. If you allow me to share my screen, thank you, then we can go into the material. So it's an exciting time, no doubt. And Intelligent Systems is the title of this conference. So I try to position the next hour of your lives in this sort of context. What is interesting that systems, as Shazia highlighted, increasingly have become intelligent. And when I highlight about leaving a legacy at a conference, I ask myself, do we leave you with an answer, or do I leave with a question? And I often feel that we as researchers are well trained in finding answers, but not well trained in finding questions. And today I probably share more questions than answers, because I personally truly believe that what we need is a robust conversation around the most compelling research questions. So we can study those questions that matter most to us, our research students, our society, economy, and every individual who's impacted by digital technologies and want to benefit from it. I picked 2 topics, one around the notion of affordances and trust. Again, I'd like to thank you so much. It's much more enjoyable to attend a conference than watching soccer these days. I'd like to highlight a growing grab to position my work overall. So what you can see here is work that the US author Thomas Friedman has published a few years ago. And in his book, Thank You for Being Late, he uses slightly different words, but he has the same meaning. What he highlights that, of course, over time, the capabilities, what we can do with advanced, sophisticated systems, and the label intelligent systems is not just used by this conference, exponentially increased. Now, this is on the one side exciting. On the other side, it means there's so much we all of a sudden can do with digital technologies. Now, Thomas Friedman inspired me in many, many ways, but most of all, he is leaving the notion of a gap, a comprehension gap. And what I call digital intelligence is humans' ability to comprehend these systems. And by now, a few years after this book has been published, we're truly to the right. We're to the right, that means the capabilities of these systems, and as Shazia highlighted, these systems can adapt quickly, they have increased levels of autonomy, They're data hungry, but they can compute data very, very quickly, lead to insights, adapt to environments. There's all the speed of light, and in many cases, to a higher level of precision and agility than humans could do. Now, if you see this sort of gap, and when I highlighted digital intelligence, I like to highlight that what we have to do as researchers, as educators, build 3 pockets of digital intelligence to make sure that this gap doesn't widen much further. So digital intelligence, and I've done this work with my colleague Marek Kovakiewicz, has in our understanding 3 components. It's literacy. Am I able to build, to design, to eloquently use systems? As behavior. So what happens when systems don't become the bottleneck anymore? There's so much more I can do. The question now increasingly pops up, should I do these things? And third, it's elegance. And that's where design matters so much. When beauty matters and design, in addition to analysis, has made it into the fields of computer science and information systems, and that's what we call digital elegance. Now, the challenge is for us as a community that I believe we had a high comfort level to the left. If we go back 33 years ago, when CAiSE emerged, we were in a domain where we are developing requirements, and then the software design, the development, the tables emerged out of the ER diagram, the workflows emerged out of the process model. We were ahead of systems, and we're very much aware of what's possible. And often it was a question of compromising in terms of what systems couldn't do. Now we're to the right. And to the right is the world very, very different. So to the world right is what I call, we have an opportunity-rich environment. In this opportunity-rich environment, the challenge increasingly is not what it is that I'm looking for from technologies, soft or hardware, intelligent systems in particular, but the question in particular is now, what is possible? And this question is very different to the question we had on the left. So on the left, as I highlighted, technology largely followed requirement. We had well-defined waterfall or agile models to minimize time to code and to improve the quality of engineering. Increasingly now, it's not time to code, but time to insight. And this is where data science, where process science have emerged, that has become a topic of interest, of course. But what we have on the right is what we might even call time to inspiration. When a lot of things are possible, the question is, how do I look to the outside? How do I conduct an environmental scan, recognizing that collectively intelligent systems develop exponentially and much faster than we will do in our capability to comprehend. And this dangerous state is what we call unconscious incompetence. We don't know what we don't know, and if this slice is increasingly growing, we have a huge challenge. And this is where I believe we need a new mindset. We need to understand what happens when the focus is not only on design follows requirements, but requirements have a precursor, and that's this increasing digital design space that we have to understand. And this is where the term affordances comes from, that I like to understand. But the notion of opportunities overall is still in its infancy, but requires rapid attention. Now, in the time we have, I can only address 2 items. But personally, I believe there may be 4 significant challenges. The first one, as I highlighted, is the challenge of comprehension. To comprehend what is possible. We were able to master, let's say, ERP systems when we put significant time into it, and then we could conduct a gap analysis. But if systems are less prescriptive, if they're more generative, if they come with a design space and variables that only get implemented when we get closer to the act of putting those systems into practice, comprehension gets increasingly difficult. And I'll, under the umbrella of affordances, want to talk about it. The second one is the notion of developing. So this new category of systems is now data intensive. You just saw that business processes, process modeling, process automation, process mining remains a popular topic at this conference and at others. Now, for a while, we talked about knowledge-intensive processes. Well, these processes have now become data-intensive. And data-intensive processes rely significantly on data, have business rules to a different level of comprehension. And as a result, what is interesting to watch is that over the last years, events, for a long time, the poor cousin of process management has gained in popularity. Identifying events, brokering events, consolidating events, and reacting to events, private or public events, is a significant competitive advantage, but also of huge interest for the academic community. And the act of developing is accelerated. When you see environments like Jeremy Howard's fast AI, it is astonishing how within hours, individuals now, once they know what's possible, can develop very, very advanced solutions that have a level of sophistication that is beyond the comprehension of many. The next one is, as I highlighted, deploying, and I know that my colleague and good friend Sudha tomorrow will talk about it, the notion of not just what we can do, but what we can do with this technology. What is it that is possible? So it's less the explanation of yet another facet of a neural network, but it's business implication, its societal impact that we're curious to explore. I won't talk about those two facets, but I will talk about trust. Now, we might present consumers, citizens, stakeholders of any kind with advanced solutions. But if these advanced solutions get so sophisticated, it doesn't take long until they become scary. And it doesn't take a lot to damage trust. So the danger is that a rich set of capabilities is compromised by our inability to design trusted solutions. So it's item number 1, affordances, and item number 4, trust, that I want to elaborate on in my keynote today. So the first one, as I highlighted, is what I would call affordances-driven design. Now, affordances is an action possibility. And affordance means an object, a physical object, a natural object, a digital object allows a consumer, a user, to use this artifact. And this is what is known as an affordance. So affordances have been widely understood and discussed in other areas, but only roughly 20 years ago came closer to our domain, in particular in the world of human-computer interaction. So the notion of HCI and affordances means that if there's so many things I can do, what can I do as a designer to ensure that users are actually are aware of this? Current modern cars come with affordances of which many customers only are even aware of 50% or less. So what we do is a sort of, you might say it's a collective waste, or it's an undercapitalization of possibilities. But what will happen is, as you saw in that initial diagram by Thomas Friedman, that if we don't design systems and refer to the affordances, we will not get the full benefit of what is possible. And the notion of affordances that are designed into objects gets even more interesting when systems are intelligent. When they're not static but dynamic, when they can adapt quickly, when they are adaptable and continuously present entire new opportunities of what is possible. The second one is when a human designer can maybe highlight affordances, when intelligent, let's say, user design on a mobile app, on a web page, is very much aware of what points the user to what is possible, can a system do the same? Can an intelligent information system highlight possibilities to a user in the same way? Is it even aware of the user's objectives and motivations? The third one, maybe the most dramatic one, is in the initial idea of affordances, Gibson studied literally animals. And an animal would look at a tree and would try to work out, what can I do with this tree that helps me? Now, today we don't talk about animals and trees. We talk about organizations and intelligent information systems. And these organizations look at intelligent information systems and try to work out, what can I do? But as you highlighted, this gap is growing literally by the hour. What we need to work out is, to what extent do we need detailed insights into intelligent systems? To what extent is it the actual impact of the affordance, as opposed to the affordance itself, that truly matters? So this is summarized in a simple 2x2 to highlight the different types of affordances that do exist. So on the one side, an affordance might exist, or it might not exist. An elephant should not stand on a table. On the other side, the question is the user, the designer, the regulator, the CIO, the software developer, the customer, aware or not aware of it? So the key focus for all of us needs to be to uncover hidden affordances. In many of the technologies we see right now, we are at the absolute infancy to see what's possible. You saw the presentation of the 4 most important or most popular tracks. And 2 were related to processes, and I think number 3 and 4 were related to artificial intelligence. I wouldn't be surprised if in 2 or 3 years, it's augmented process management, artificially supported design, mining, and improvement of process that matters. So the whole space where AI, for example, it's process modeling or process science more broadly, is probably at its infancy. So what we will see over the years to come, that hidden affordances, there might be a recommender system that guides a user to possible process improvements, will become design artifacts, become tested, improved, get rolled out, and then they become a widely accepted and used affordance. This is what we call affordance latency. How long does it take from a hidden affordance to perceived affordance? And you can see this metric is very different to a metric that I highlighted earlier called time to code or time to insight in data or process science. What we need to do, and it's a second challenge have to avoid, is the false positive or the false affordance. The assumption that something is possible, but it's not. Now, of course, research understands that sometimes our hypotheses are not always validated. Corporates understand that innovation might lead to a learning experience, but not to new revenue. Nevertheless, what we want to do is to minimize the cost behind a false affordance. We want to minimize the time to that valuable insight. We want to minimize failure rates. So what you can see, what we need to work out in the intelligent information systems community is, on the one side, how do we accelerate that hidden affordances become actually and widely known affordances? And second, how do we avoid the false affordance, the false positive in the top left corner? Now, in a kind of dynamic way, and I'll give you an example in a second, this could look like this. So the first one, and again, we're at the infancy, is cognition. It's the understanding of how an IT artifact. An IT artifact could be broad, let's say big data, and Sudha will share some insights tomorrow, could be utilized by society, industry, an organization, or an individual. And that leads to potential affordance. An IT artifact could be very, very unique. It could be very specific AI capability that you, for example, find on Fast AI, and you want to work out what can I do in the context of a specific opportunity or challenge. The second one is, as we just saw, an affordance might exist, but how do I roll it out? How do I ensure that it's widely used? I remember when SAP moved to a world of services, one question was how do we develop services, how we make them available to our user base. But the second or third question was also how to actually navigate a fast-growing space of services. So how do I ensure that these affordances are visible, seen, and at the same token, that the false affordances that are perceived are immediately eliminated. The third one is then the act of implementation, the actualization, and this all leads to some sort of impact. And this is what widely is discussed, of course, in the news. Cognition to behavior might be one big black box, but it's the actual impact that is visible. And this impact can be positive, or countless examples have shown this, can be negative. And then we try to work out in forensics where was the failure in this process. Now, we have done this, and I just give you one example for one solution or digital technology called blockchain. So blockchain might not be necessarily intelligent information systems, but I'm using it to show you what affordances are on these different levels. And I'm grateful to my collaborators here, Nadine and Jürgen. So what we've done is we studied the 30 largest banks by market capitalization around the world. And what do they do with blockchain? And what you see with some affordances, they're incredibly technical. So tokenization, the ability to create a secure digital identity for an object, a person, property, smart object, and so on. The second one is tracing, to understand movements and state changes in this object. And the third one is triggering, the ability to trigger an action. We've seen banks who develop solutions where, for example, they create a digital identity for a car that is funded by a loan in a car dealership. So this car dealer has these cars, they're funded by loans. And if I combine this digital token with GPS, I could literally trace this car and very quickly understand when is the car standing still, when it's moving around, when is it a test drive, but when has this car obviously and significantly left the car yard, means shared, change its ownership. And this is the moment where we could trigger repayment. So this is a simple scenario where we have very, very technical capabilities, and they convert into an entire new way of payment arrangements in the B2B car loan lending space. The second one, and more implicit than explicit, is what we call design affordances. So design affordances means what are the capabilities that are a bit broader that are emerging from this particular technology. Integrity, the claim that the data that we have when we tokenize or trace is complete, or validity, that it complies with, let's say, external requirements. And compatibility is when various players come together, when we create solutions that are not peer-to-peer solutions, but collaborative solutions. So you can see how the terminology has changed. And it's that sort of terminology that we have to find. Adaptability, as an example, that matters in the space of intelligent information systems. Third, and that's then more interesting for, let's say, the IS community, the business community, can we find business affordances, capabilities where the last two silos on the left, the technical and design affordances, might not be comprehended in detail, but it's a business affordance that matters. Micro-fulfillment, where I, let's say, create an opportunity for a customer to bring their own data, where a university like ours, QUT, creates a blockchain record for our students, and they can carry the digital artifact with it for the rest of their lives. Synergistic delivery, of course, relies on validity and compatibility, and it's the space when multiple stakeholders come together to provide a service, let's say learning providers offering services to the student. And a sovereign solution means when, and that's the widely discussed impact, when the third party is disconnected. When I empower customers to do, let's say, peer-to-peer lending. You can see micro-fulfillment, synergistic delivery, sovereign solutions are anti-new affordances that become tangible. What we are working on is now populating them with examples so that we more or less translate technical affordances into business affordances. And it's this sort of translational process. It's a bit like what we see in the medical field, where translational processes are well advanced, but it doesn't seem that in the space of IS or comp science, we have a similar translational process along these affordances. At the very end, and that's what all a customer might care about, is the question, what's the effect or the impact? Let me give you very specific 2 examples. One will take us to Madrid. Madrid in Motion. Madrid in Motion is a mobility environment, mobility solutions where 30+ providers, startups come together, all with their own app. Now, Banco Santander, a large Spanish bank, created an environment that allows a unique validation, a unique payment process. So it massively increases the convenience and leads to credible payments, no matter what app you're using. The other one, a sovereign solution, will take us to Brazil, where Itaú, Unibanco, a Brazilian bank, Itaú, created an environment that facilitated peer-to-peer lending, club loans. And so again, the bank could even evacuate that space. And what it does, it provides trusted interactions and trusted business as a service. So you can see these 2 instances, sort of business affordances, make it tangible. What we would love to see is that the actualization of affordances doesn't become the bottleneck. If it's true what Thomas Friedman said, if the gap between intelligent systems and their capabilities and digital intelligence is getting wider and wider, we can't just sit and build. We also have to design an easy way to consume and actualize affordances. If I take intelligent systems as an example, affordances in artificial intelligence is widely discussed. This is the robot that say tries to see and tries to make sense out of an environment and looking for clues, for affordances in the environment to, for example, navigate. What is less discussed in literature is affordances of artificial intelligence. It's not what AI can sense in the environment and the affordances it can find. It is what we can do with AI. And very much like we, over the last years, have developed reference models that are often more transactional and industry specific, for example, what we don't have is that higher order set of reference cases, reference affordances that would allow us to articulate new requirements and help us to overcome unconscious incompetence. Once we have these affordances, once we even could contextualize them, what are context factors? Let's say you need a community of service providers, then we could connect them with the demand side. And what I predict will happen is that in the space of data and process science, we go beyond modeling data and processes and increasingly develop an appetite for additional attributes, metadata, the design rationale for business process. And if a process has a high appetite for agility, what we typically don't know, or at least do not capture right now, then there will be affordances of intelligent information systems that are relevant. What we don't have right now is that set of metadata that would matter for, let's say, processes, so we understand the demand side for those affordances. As I highlighted, I could easily imagine an environment that is augmented, an open market space where, well, I'm, let's say, designing a process, I get exposed to the latest set of affordances and examples. Not because I'm fixing a problem, but I'm eager to explore what is possible. So this is why I believe that affordances become as hot as requirements, because affordances and a call for action to make affordances for different types of intelligent information systems as tangible as what we try to do with blockchain affordances. Now, the next and final topic for this keynote brings me to the notion of trust. Trust is even longer than affordances, widely discussed in all kinds of disciplines, from sociology to psychology to game theory and so on. Trust is becoming a primary concern. So we just launched a paper. We worked with Cisco and Cisco commissioned a study, but we try to work out what's the role of trust, but also how is trust facilitated with a focus on retail as just one example. And one of the people we talked to was Craig Creed, who was running as a CEO, one of the largest fast food chains in the world. And what he highlighted is, as you can see here, how trust has shifted from the physical world to the digital world. It's no longer the trust in the quality of a pizza, it's trust in the digital environment. And this sort of trust shift means we see new levels of trust intensity. And there are a number of reasons why this matters a lot to our community. First, in an increasingly online environment, the tangibility is gone. Simple examples are that organizations like Walmart struggle to sell food and veggies online because these are items where tactile experiences matter. Now, how do I facilitate in a world that becomes increasingly digital the trust shift so typical market transactions can continue? But at the moment, again, we are only at the infancy to understand what trust truly means. The second one is visibility. So visibility is the space where I hand over private data, where it's no longer just value for money, but it's value for data that matters. But while I say goodbye to my money, I don't say goodbye to my data. And it's a sort of visibility that leads to uncertainty, and that leads to trust concerns. And third and finally, but maybe most widely discussed when it comes to intelligent information systems, the notion of explainability, or at least interpretability. That means I understand at least vaguely why something happened. I understand why a plane flies. I don't understand the engineering insights. And it's the difference between explainability and interpretability. But if I take Amazon Go as an example, an incredibly intelligent information system. Customers walk in, take a selfie, and walk out with an empty shopping bag because they don't trust the environment. Now, what you can see is that going back to my second slide, the comprehension gap could mean that what looks interesting and comprehensive and attractive to organizations and maybe users is not activated because of trust concerns. Now, the world is not just full of trust concerns, the world is also full of trust opportunities. So trust is not just a problem, trust can be increased. And if I create that sort of trust credit, then I can facilitate activities that others couldn't. Again, blockchain is a typical example where provenance tracking allows us to overcome uncertainties, trust concerns. The same is true with our social networks. The notion of a trust network has been speculated in academia, but we hardly ever saw realities. Today, when you use large networks like Facebook, you could potentially, if maintained, tap into your network of friends. And if you trust them more than the majority, that might help you with certain trust decisions. So in the domain of trust, we have increasingly trust concerns, increasingly trust opportunities. Now, trust, for all of you who are in the space of secure systems, privacy, you're familiar with the term trustworthiness. And it's widely discussed, and trustworthiness comes with a long list of attributes that are widely discussed, and even today at the conference, papers will address some of these. Now, the relationship between trustworthy and trust is not direct. Trustworthy means I've got all the features of a system that deserves trust, but it doesn't mean that I get trust. So trust, similar to affordances, is relational. Trust is in the eyes of the user. So you could argue I might have a system that is not trustworthy at all, and it's also not trusted. And this is where fast evolving right now, the domain of zero trust technologies can be positioned. The second one is, of course, happy days. It's a trustworthy environment, and the customer can comprehend this. So organizations who provide secure solutions, Cisco being one of them, have this challenge to ensure they end up either in the top right corner or have organizations to manage the bottom left corner. You have a problem when your solution is in trust debit. Take a driverless car, a highly intelligent information system. It might be on level 5 at some point. How many of us would sit in the back and read a newspaper? And how many of us would sit behind the steering wheel? So the challenge is, how do we ensure if objectively a trustworthy system exists, but trust does not come with the user? The other challenge we have, again, widely visible, is trust credit. A customer trusts us more, trusts the system more than they should. And here we have an obligation for the society and our system users to ensure that this trust is appropriately invested. So you can see the tractions we have, and that trustworthiness is necessary, but not a sufficient condition to ensure that we end up with systems that are actually used. And as I highlighted, an intelligent information system will not just be data hungry, it will be trust hungry. And why I assume and sense that we understand how to satisfy the appetite for more and more data, I believe, again, we are at the infancy to understand how we satisfy the increased appetite for trust. So this is what I call trust design. In fact, I teach my students and I tell them, I want to make you a trust designer. I want to create the capability, like a solution designer, a process designer, that you understand how to engineer trust in systems to ensure we stay on this nice balanced path. And for this, I give you a couple of examples. And before we get there, we have to understand how trust can be captured. And trust, in my naive understanding, is quite simple. Trust only matters if something is uncertain. And then my confidence will go up. So in other words, if I'm able to reduce uncertainty, my confidence, and as a result, my trust will go up. So what we have done is, we break down trust management into the management of certainty or uncertainty and the management of confidence. Now, certainty could be multiple things. It could be systemic certainty. And then what we see at a conference like CAiSE, a lot of ideas, how we make systems more certain, how we ensure the predictability, where, let's say, a user might be able to lock in one scenario, because a highly adaptable system means it might not be predictable. But I want certainty, like locking in a fuel price that I consume a few days later. A system might have a lot of behavioral certainty when it's an intelligent system that works in an augmented environment. When users have different levels of capabilities and qualifications. This is where what we see a lot, we either engineer out the behavioral uncertainty. We have robots who at midnight do stock take in a retailer, or we create augmented environments where, let's say, a user can speak to the most qualified staff using advanced communication technologies. The third one is quite tricky, and it's perceived uncertainty. When a customer believes there's uncertainty, but there's none. Let's take Domino's Pizza. Domino's Pizza has an AI-enabled camera. And what they do is two things. They, on the one side, take a snapshot create a new event in the pizza production supply chain process. And this picture is shared with the user, overcoming uncertainty and increasing transparency. What it's also doing is it is smart enough to understand if the extra jalapenos that I ordered are on the pizza or not. And if they're not, then the pizza baker will get advised. So you can see how these sort of solutions that you witness as well as a sort of self-checkout at a supermarket and ensure again systemic certainty in an environment when humans and machines interact. And finally, it's vulnerability. So think about a normal distribution, and if uncertainty exists, trust is required, but that might mean that you're the unlucky one who doesn't get what he or she had hoped for. So this is where advanced solutions to manage vulnerability emerge. When, let's say, I will be probably in a year able to have the parcel from Amazon that I did enjoy in the boot of my car, and it will be picked up in a very convenient environment. It is not the desired solution for a circular economy, but it's one example for how organizations try to address the issue of vulnerability. So, a trust designer designs certainty into systems. The second one is confidence. So unlike certainty where I change the product, with confidence I change the perception about the product. Now, confidence building can occur in multiple ways. It can occur by providing access to trusted human sources. It could be what we see in a lot of ranking algorithms, trust in the majority. It could be my very personal trust network, individuals that I trust in a specific context. It could be trust in similar people, people who have the same literacy level, the same symptoms, the same interest areas, but they're unknown to me, they just completely match my characteristics. Or it could be trust in global experts, and I need to activate those credible experts, and I have to make sure they're certified as a source of trust. It could be as well, and that shows how complex this domain is, trust that is engineered by regulation. So regulation around intelligent information systems, the extent to which regulators try to interfere with AI systems is an example for a new attempt to build trust. It could be trust in the organization or trust we have established in systems. You probably trust the navigation system in your app or in your car more than the person next to you. And the final two pieces are, on the one side, experiential trust, my previous experiences. Process mining for a retailer could mean activate the last 15 deliveries to rural Australia where Michael might live. And if these 15 experiences were within my expectation, it might be this bringing up of previous performance of the system that boosts my trust. Or, and again, that's something we do a lot, and it was articulated in my second slide, it could be trust that is grounded in literacy. If we are able, as a society, to develop new levels of digital intelligence, then we have increased levels of trust literacy. So this highlights it, that a comp science community on its own cannot engineer trust. But it's truly an interplay of human and intelligent systems efforts that will lead to comprehensive trust solutions. I'll just quickly give you a couple of more ideas. One is the idea, what I highlighted, of a trust network, where you bring your own sources of trust. If you go to a Walmart virtual fitting room, in that moment when you don't trust the sales assistant, you could quickly interact with trusted sources, people that you trust with a purchasing decision in this moment in time. Those solutions only exist on paper. I can't at the moment bring my own trust network into a relationship. But hey, I go shopping, and based on the location, the relevant loyalty card gets fired up on my phone. How far would we be away from firing up the trust network that matters most next time I need additional sources of trust? The next one, and that aligns with the idea of process mining, its popularity at this conference, is what I call trust mining. Trust mining is where I try to identify data that acts as a proxy for trust. That could either mean the customer gives me optional data, trust-intensive data, but, and that's maybe different to process mining, it could be the absence of data that I'm looking for. When a customer doesn't want to see additional receipt, when a customer delegates decision-making and doesn't do certain decisions at all. So trust mining might be a variant of process mining that will allow us to automate, to compute the extent to which we're trusted in a very cost-effective way. I bring it to an end with a notion of core and extreme trust. So core trust is when a system is doing what I expect. And that's what we were used to on the left in the initial picture. When I do an invoice verification process in my ERP system, I know that at the very end, the invoice is accepted or not, and then released for payment. Extreme trust means that the decision done by the system is better than what I could do. Let's say take Spotify as an example. So these so-called extremely trusted systems are systems where and it's not just in the space of, let's say, personalized medication or music streaming. It might be seen increasingly in ERP systems. When the system provider can see before I see a cash flow problem. When my bank knows before I know where to invest the money, it might, dare do I say it, in years to come, that car manufacturers will slow down your car when you hit a downtown city because they realize speeding in this moment might not be good for you. So these are extremely trusted systems. And what will happen is that intelligent information systems become so data rich, so rich on insights, that in many cases, they will be able to make better decisions like humans. We just need to work out, is this what we want? And if so, how do we engineer not just trust, but extreme trust? And this is where I believe we need trust designers. So success for me would be that at CAiSE 2025, trust design, trust architectures, trust mining enter new areas that we as a CAiSE community study, investigate, progress, to ensure that the absence of trust doesn't become the bottleneck in the rollout of intelligent information systems. I might leave it there to ensure we've got plenty of time for conversations. I will make my slides via Marcello or CAiSE available, so by all means, you have these slides then. But in summary, I believe affordances might become as popular as requirements, that we hopefully can help with the translational process of turning affordances into impact. But in particular, I'm passionate about ensuring that we professionalize the way we design trust into our systems, but also provide our students with the required trust literacy. Again, I stop here. I'm very, very grateful to CAiSE and Marcello for providing me with the opportunity to speak to you. And I look forward to the conversations we have. And with this, I hand over to CAiSE to MC from here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michael. As always, you know, you have this positive view of looking at things and looking at the accelerating pace of change as an opportunity rather than a disruption. That's really inspiring. So audience question and answer forum is open for your questions. Michael, if I may just kick off with sort of a meta level question, you know, because with these opportunities, we need people with different skill sets. Just like you said, computer scientists cannot engineer trust. And with affordances and trust, such a mix of social technical challenges. So one of the barriers that I think is faced in from a scientific community's point of view is how do we work across these disciplines? Would love to get the benefit of your experience and how we navigate that.
That's a very good and also a very important question, Shazia. I probably don't have the multi-dollar answer here, but I think what we need to do is ensure we have a bit more mutation. So that the conference also have got tracks that are slightly out of their comfort zone and not just more of the same. That the journals bring different communities together. We learn so much more by working with people who know much more about what we don't know. And the more we become comfortable with what we don't know, as opposed to incrementally improving what we know, the deeper will be our insights. But it requires a comfort with the unknown. So the very pragmatic suggestion I would have is to engineer disruption into conferences. And that might mean to maybe create a complete new track where we know that nobody has the answer. Like a track on trust design and trust architecture.
Yes, Michael, you sometimes just have moments of phrasing. I don't know if that is just for me or for others, but we do have another question just coming up from John Croxty. So what are, Michael, some of the good ways of modeling and communicating trust and trustworthiness?
So what we have worked out is a methodology. So the first one is we call what moments of trust. So can we at least locate when trust matters? And once you understand where trust matters, then you can work out at that moment in trust, do I have a concern or an opportunity? So a bit like a business process where what we do is we study weaknesses or new design options. And then you have to work out, is this concern, let's say, related to uncertainty with data, uncertainty with processes, uncertainty with the resource. So I think what we need to work out is, at these moments of trust, sort of taxonomy to understand how to conceptualize these concerns. As I highlighted, we're probably at the infancy to understand what trust means. So I see trust as a projection like cost or risk. That we studied in the past, but a projection that is probably new.
Very interesting. So questions are flowing in now. There is a biggish question from Marlon, also posted in the chat. Perhaps we can, Laura, if we can unmute Marlon so he can ask the question himself. Marlon Duma. I got it. Marlon, over to you.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Marlon.
Hi, thank you, Michael. That was a fantastic talk as usual. But I've seen other talks about you and I want to relate it from you and I want to relate to those. You introduced today this concept of systemic certainty and a whole trust design framework around it, and it's very fascinating. But in previous talk, you have talked about systemic ideation, or if I can call it, systemic innovation. And I kind of see a bit of a tension between systemic certainty and systemic ideation. So, because today you told us that systemic certainty is about reducing variation, and systemic ideation is about increasing variation. And my question is like, is it possible at all to have an organization where systemic certainty and systemic ideation are coexisting like seamlessly at the same time?
That's a very good question, Marlon. We call this paper Trusted Innovation, and trust loves certainty and innovation loves, as you highlighted, uncertainty. I think this so if I go back to my very simple supermarket example, So it's maybe the sort of example that I had with the supermarket. So maybe it's the sort of, I trust my supermarket with ongoing variation. See, what will happen is intelligent information systems will give us a lot of variations all the time. Look at a Tesla that changes every 2 days. I would guess many Tesla customers are quite happy with that variation and enjoy that variation. So it's maybe not certainty in the sense of always give me the same predictable process, but certainty that whatever variation you do will be in my benefit.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Marlon, for that very deep question. We have another question from Edwin Chemaler, which is maybe related for big organizations working in silos. They have a huge gap when it comes to affordances. So what would be your advice to overcome that?
Well, I think affordances is largely environmental scanning. A lot of organizations are better to look on the inside than to look to the outside. We study pain points and processes, but not opportunity points. We work with a Brisbane-based water company. They have a chief opportunity officer, and they regularly understand what are the capabilities of floating devices, when they can spot leakages in a pipe. And so you can see that an organization that has internal silos needs to make sure it's not siloed off from the outside. And I think affordances are much more about breaking the silo to the outside and ensuring, let's say, this water company that tries to understand is probably more important than our.
Michael, we are having a little bit of problem with your screen freezing sometimes. So just a bit of that answer, I think, got missed over there. So Edwin's request is just to repeat the middle part.
I just quickly just said it's probably not about the silos on the inside, but the silo to the outside. The scanning of what's possible. And so I would shift the conversation from not breaking the walls on the inside, but breaking the wall to the outside and finding a way that we are all always aware of what's possible.
Yes, indeed. We have probably time for a couple more questions. There is a question from the chat from Laji to say, thanks a lot, Michael, for this talk. My question is how to annotate things like knowledge, graphs, and databases, etc. by trust.
So, I mean, the notion of trust networks is also sort of a directed graph. Who trusts whom? It's called referral trust. So there's a small community that studies directed graphs in which we capture trust. I don't know if these need to be connected or not. I mean, as I highlighted, let's say, if you could allocate knowledge to individuals, knowledge could become a proxy for expertise. And that could be trust enhancing. Data that is widely used could be credible data, and that could mean it's trusted data. So I think we will have standalone graphs, like a trust network, but I can see how once we identify what are proxies for trust, widely used data, significant knowledge, that we want to connect this to our trust networks.
Thank you, Michael. And we have one more question here. I think it refers to a previous question, a variation over the previous question. Could the proposed methodology be readapted for comparing multiple technologies at the same time so as to design, motivate a better technology outperforming state of the art? I think this is going to your other good topic on innovation. So, yeah.
So, and the question is always how we define better. And what I like to highlight is that we're open in terms of the metrics that matter. So let's say computational time, completeness, lack of deadlocks are things we're used to. If a system is by design more trusted than another, it's more a metric we're not used to. So I could see also how we create a complete new set of metrics that I use to evaluate the system. As I highlighted, the organizations we work with are slightly frustrated because they know that the systems are trustworthy, but they're not trusted. And so the engineer says, I'm finished and my system's trustworthy, but now they need a trust designer who takes the next step.
Yep. All right, that's very good. We've got a whole list of additional questions coming in through, but given that we are at 6:30, we might wrap it up. Michael, I'll communicate these questions to you.
Thank you.
Later on, and then, up to you if you'd like to respond to that. With that, I'd just like to say thank you, everybody, for your participation. Big thank you, Michael, for your inspiring talk to kick off CAiSE 21. I'd just like to hand over to Marcello or Laura if you want to say any reminders about the next sessions.
Yes, thank you, Michael, for the insightful keynote, and Shazia for sharing that. So we've got now half an hour break, and at 11 a.m. CEST, that is 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Time, we have the first two sessions of the main conference, privacy and security, one topic, very relevant to the keynote, and the process discovery, the other session, and then the first tutorial going on. Then there will be the lunch/dinner break, where depending on where you are, that is an hour, and then we will continue with the next two sessions. And don't forget the social gathering today at 3 p.m. CEST or 11 p.m. Melbourne time. Thank you.
Okay.
Very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Great.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.